Okay, so in this video, we are going to discuss about functions in Python. And regarding the functions in Python, we have to understand that what is a function. So typically, when you have to understand what are functions, I will just give you one example. If I have open board with me, it would help me. Uh, it's loading up. I don't have a very good system with me. Of course, that will. So, if you talk about functions, we can understand functions from the perspective of mathematics. So, in the previous classes, or even the classes which you're studying right now, you may have looked into mathematics such as f of x is one of the functions. So, f of x is one of the function, and it could be functions could be like x plus 2. So, if that is the case, then um, let's suppose let's suppose you put f of 2, right? If you put f of 2, then you will get in here 2 plus 2, and ultimately you will get as 4. So in here, when we talk about functions in here, functions are typically, these are your functions, okay? These are your functions, and these are your arguments, okay? So these are your arguments, okay? These are your arguments. So typically, we have to understand that these are your arguments. Okay, and this is when you talk about this section, this is more like the body of the function. Okay. So this is the body, is the body of the function. Okay. So so this is what we have to understand. So let me just get back a bit. So f of x is your function, and this is the body of the function. Whatever is in here, it is the argument. And again, this particular part is your function name. Okay, so this particular part is uh, your function name. Okay, so this is your function name. Okay, this is your function name. Similarly, similarly, you could have a function like this as well, f of x comma y, make a bit comma a bit better, x comma y. Right, put this one y. Okay, will be f comma y. Okay, so again, in here also, when we talk about this function, when we talk about this function has two arguments, which is one, which is this and this. There are total of, there are total of two arguments in here. So two args. Okay, let me use it. So there will be two arguments in this one. So two. So This is a function of two arguments. Similarly, you could write function as what? Similarly, you could write function as g of x. Right? You could write g of f, not limited to f. You could also write a function as g of x. Then this is your name of the function. Okay, so this is name of function. Okay, name of the function. Right. So typically these are functions in mathematics. Okay, these are functions in mathematics. Similarly, function also work in a similar fashion in your Python. Okay, so function also work in a similar pattern. Let me just close this one. This, let's close this one. Go to desktop. This- okay. Right. So when you talk about functions in Python, when you talk about functions in Python, these are like the functions in mathematics which I showed you just before, right? So, so these functions are similar to functions in Python. Okay, so that is what I have like I'm trying to explain in what I have written here. A function is a name block of the code that performs a specific task. So it is a block of code which performs a specific task. And if you compare this with mathematics, then yes, the this is the function, right? This is the function, or you could say like let's zoom in a bit. So this is the function, and this is the body of the function. Okay. So the block of code will be the body of the function, and this is the name of the function as well as the argument. Okay. So in here, that we have to understand in here. So the block of the code that performs a specific task, instead of writing the same code repeatedly, you can define a function once and call it whenever you need that, and the task will be performed like that. Right. So in that we have to understand that yes, um, that is that is what we have to understand in here. Okay. So hold on, let me do one more thing here. Is set this up properly. Okay. So yeah. Now the point is, when we compare this to the mathematical function, this is the function, this is the argument, and this is the body of the function. In the same way, the function of Python is defined when you write it actually. Okay. So you could also utilize these functions in mathematics as well. Obviously, you haven't have tried that before, but yes, you could utilize these functions in mathematics as well. Suppose if you are like deriving a lot of big equations in higher mathematics. So you define one function like this, and then you utilize that function later on in the equation afterwards, and then you calculate whatever the value it is, right? So you do not need to write always, you need to write these all, you know, these all big equations in derivation of all the other, you know, uh, mathematical proofs typically. So yeah, that we have to understand that. Okay, that we have to understand that. So that is why even in programming languages we utilize these functions. Okay, so even in programming languages we utilize these functions. Okay, so next what you have to understand in here is that because it is a block of code which we can like utilize whenever you want. we do not need to write the same instructions again and again. We can just utilize that same function, and that function will do the same task again with whatever arguments you have. Think of a function like a specialized toolbox. If you need to drive a nail, you grab a hammer. In programming, you need to calculate the average. You call a function and design to do exactly that. Right. So toolbox, when you talk about toolboxes, suppose if you're like, hammering some nails, or, fixing some thing in, let's say, in your home, right? Or even just like, um, setting up your switchboard in your home. So you need some toolbox in there. So you suppose you need a tester in there which checks whether there is an alternating current coming in or not. You need screws, you need different type of screws like plus and minus screws, all these things you need. So it is a toolbox. So you make tools with these functions and you utilize those functions from there itself. Okay. Now, advantages of the functions are like reusability is one of the most advantages of the function, because now, as the functions, if you write the functions once, you could use it as many times as you want without, repeating the whole instructions of those functions again and again. Another thing which we get is the modularity. So modularity is like breaking a large problem into smaller problems into so that they can be manageable with a limited amount of instructions or a limited amount of programming statements. So that modularity comes into play. This again like backs into the philosophy, not the philosophy, but the concept of analyzing the problem. So the process of analyzing the problem is actually breaking the problems into smaller parts, and those smaller problems we you know rectifies those smaller parts individually, and then we uh, join them together, and then we have a full solution of that. Now, also because functions break a large complex problem into different uh, modular functions, it is far more easier to read and understand the code as well, right? So that is the third point. And debugging also, it is easier if we make it through functions, because suppose if some error comes into one big function, such as a main function or something like that, right? And if there is an error, yes, we get certain amount of information that there are some errors in it. However, what happens is that uh, typically what happens in here is that when we check the traceback of that, we will not be able to find the exact line, because even how good the interpreter is, even that they sometimes miss at exact line or which error is there. Because semantically, it will be very difficult to analyze those things if everything falls into one big file without any function. So that functions categorization also helps in like tracing back where actually that problem has occurred, or where that bug has occurred. Okay, so that is yeah. There are different types of functions. So the primary ones are the built-in functions. Okay, these are the predefined functions that is built into Python and always are available. Okay, always are available. Now, when we talk about these functions, let's take one example of that one. Take one example of that one. So I will just call, just the, I'll just call the Python interpreter, right? And I will just show you how to utilize these built-in functions. So suppose I make one string. Okay, so I name the variable of that string as one, and then I just write this is just an example. Okay, this is just an example. And then I just utilize the len built-in function to count the number of characters. So we get the total number of characters as 20. Okay. And if I just put a full stop in this, then we get as 24, right? So because it also counts the spaces in between and all the special characters as well, right? So right now I get as 23, and if I put a full stop in that, then or the full stop or period in that, then it will be 24, right? So that is there. And the next we have is your print. So the print is straightforward. So when you utilize print, right? So then S1, so S1, not exclamation mark, S1. I just pressed shift by mistake. Okay, so print S1, and we will get whatever the string is in there. It says that this is just an example, right? So this is there. And then we have the type as well, right? So type is another one of that. So let's say if you want to check the type of S1 itself. So we put type, and in the argument we put as S. So this is your type. So it shows that it is a class of string. So this data type is a string class. Okay, this data type is a string class. Next is what we have to understand in here is like there is another one which is input. So input is very, very straightforward and easy to understand. Like suppose I'm taking an input. So let's take an input as I1. Okay. And in input, we just put as input, and we can give any arguments in this one. So the arguments will be like enter something and see it blurt out. Right. That's the argument which I gave. Now when I like press enter in it, it will ask for some input. While the argument in here will be uh, given as the instruction. Okay. So it says that enter something and see it blurt out. So I say like, okay, give me something. Okay, give me something. Okay. So now it doesn't blurt it out. Why it doesn't blurt it out? Because that's the specific input which I gave in here. Okay, give me something is stored in your I1 variable. Okay. So when I check what is in the I1 variable, I will see that there is a sentence called okay, give me something. Okay, and it also includes one of the space which I have given just to make it more presentable. So these are some of the built-in functions, right? Next, what we have is like function defined in your modules, right? So we have already looked into this one, but we can look into these ones again. Okay, we can look into these ones again. So it's like let's suppose math functions we have like math module functions we have and random module functions we have, right? So to utilize those functions, because these are functions defined in certain modules and these are like module defined functions, so we have to import that. The import is your keyword. Okay, import is your keyword. And in import, we will import the math. We will import the math module, right? Now we have imported the math module. Now from the math module, we are taking out the square root function and we are giving it some argument. Argument we will give as 16. Now when I like call this function with this argument, it will give me something in a float value which is 4.0. So this is one. These are functions defined in your modules, or sometimes it is called library functions as well, or sometimes called module functions as well, right? So that is there. Another one you could search is like import. Uh, it is already in your interpreter. You just have to like import these modules in here. Another one is your random. Okay, random is there. Now from random, say, let's say random, I call the function random, and in that you could utilize the random function itself or the rand int function itself, depending because there are many methods in those. modules. So there are many functions in those modules, so we can utilize any one of those things. So I'm just going to, utilize this one as in like the rand int one. So from 1 to 7, I will take it. Okay. So when I run this, it gives us 4. Again, if I run this, it gives us 1. Again, if I run this, it's 3, 2, 1, 5, 6, 5, 4. All this output it is here. It is even given 7, right? So the only thing it is not giving me is here. I think my fingers are paining. The only thing it is not giving me is your 6 for some reason. Okay. Now it has given 6 as well. So this is one of the examples of function defined in modules. Okay, now then something it is called like a user defined function. Right? There's something called the user defined function. Okay. When we talk about user defined functions, talk about a user defined function. These are typically made by the one who is programming, right? So let me just get out of this read eval print loop or Python shell, and let's make one of the program. Okay. I'm going to utilize the VI editor in this one. So VI user define function. Okay, so this is it. Now the thing is that we can define function with this as def keyword, and let's name the function as some. Let's use yeah some text in there. And then utilize a print. We have here some text. Okay, and then from here we just call this some text. We are calling as so we have written this, and when we call this particular file, we'll see that some text is printed, right? So for calling it, we just use Python, and we got an output as here some text. Okay, so yeah, and if you like, review the code, what the code is there? So code is what? User defined function. So let's just look at this. Again is starting again, nothing else. User defined function. I think I have to wear that guard again. So in here we have that this one, right? This will be there. Okay, so in here I have defined some text as a function, and in this some text as a function we have here is some text which is printing it from the building function. So in the fifth line I have called that function which is the some text function. Okay, so the output in here is coming as here is some text. Suppose if let's say I didn't call this function, then nothing will be given in the output of this. Nothing will be given in the output of this program, right? So let's try this again. Let's see, you have no output in this one, output in this program. So see, this is where I ran the program, and there is no output. Unlike in here, there is an output in this. Right. So that is what we have to understand in here. And, yeah. Okay. Now these are the three types of functions in there. Now there is something called indentations, which I will talk about. Two things are there: indentation and how to use VI. Yeah, I think I will just push in afterwards after this, this video is being published or something like that. Right, so I'm just going to like record whatever has been done in here. So let's see. So include, right. So that is all. So this is what is it is written in here. Of course, these functions are created by the programmer to perform specific tasks, and that is what I have shown you. Typically, in your this one, as in like I made this and then I just call this function. So these are functions created by the programmer to perform specific tasks. Okay, and yeah, that is in here. Okay, so thank you for joining in. Hopefully, you will get understand something from here on.